years ago. Sonia was just 9 years old, and this was a significant day in her life. You see, it was 6 months after the divorce, and her mom was going out on her first date, and that evening her mom turned to her and said, "Sweetheart, you'll be fine. Just keep the doors and windows locked." And with that, her mom left. And Sonia had never been left alone before, and she wanted to be brave, and she wanted to be strong, and everything was going okay until somebody started walking up the front steps of the house. And something about that freaked her out. She ran to the kitchen, got the biggest knife she could find, went in the bathroom, shut the door, and stood there in the dark, holding that knife, waiting for what was going to happen. What was going to happen next? I met her 30 years after that event. She is a CEO of a company, $30 million in revenue. It's profitable, it's growing. And she had heard me speak, and she came in to see me. And she said, I've got a problem. And the problem is I am a world-class micromanager. Every decision that my management team makes, I have to be involved in. It took me 2 years to get the right people around the table, people with the right expertise, passion, drive to help me grow the company, but I'm alienating them because I'm putting my nose in those places and they won't leave. Help me stop. I said, okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to think of a particular time where you felt the urge to micromanage. She goes, just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a customer and something was going wrong and I knew I had to take over. I said, okay, in your mind, go back to that event and I want you to see what you saw when you were talking on the phone. She said, I was in my office, I'm seeing it now. Listen to the conversation, whatever was happening. She goes, okay, I'm doing it now. When you do those two things, you get to re-experience what you were feeling. What were you feeling? And she goes, that's weird. I was feeling an uncomfortable feeling here, and I'm feeling it now.
All right.
So using a tool from neuroscience, you can link this feeling to her unconscious mind that records everything. Had I asked her, have you felt this feeling before, to her conscious mind, she would not, don't know. But her unconscious mind went, oh my God, I had forgotten this. I was 9 years old and I was in that bathroom. Because when she was in that bathroom holding that knife, she had a thought, and the thought was, to my mom, men are more important than me. And from that thought, she created a belief that the only person I can truly trust in the entire world is me. And this belief had been driving her behavior for 30 years. With applied neuroscience now, we have the ability to go in and identify that belief quickly and to change it. So we change that belief, send her on her way, and a couple of days later I get a call from her saying, I'm not sure what you did, but the urge to micromanage is gone, and something weird's happening. What's happening that's weird? She says, for the first time in my life, I can appreciate my accomplishments. And that's what I want to talk to you today, is that in our society, we think change is hard, change is difficult. If it's ever going to happen, it's going to take a long time. But with neuroscience now, we have the ability to understand what's happening inside the mind, what's happening inside the brain. We can study people that are changing, and we can capture that change and teach other people how to do that. Before I started doing this, I was running a consulting company in Silicon Valley. I would help companies from the Valley, from Asia, from Europe, launch in the US. So I worked with many companies around the world, and all of those companies had two problems that were difficult to solve. One was, we would have somebody working for us that was doing a good job. If they just changed one little thing, they would be doing a great job. We invested in training. They wanted to change. We wanted them to change, but change never happened. Why does that happen? The second thing is, in management teams, you get the best and brightest people in the company coming together. But oftentimes, because there are office politics, there is selfishness. There's people politics and blaming that the whole is less than the sum of the parts. In the US, we spend $100 million to fix this problem with a 70% failure rate. So I said, okay, this is a problem worth solving. How can we solve that? It's a human problem. That's what I'm going to share with you, what I've uncovered about human behavior and team dynamics. Because right now, in your companies, you have people that work for you that you go, if they could just change this one simple thing, they would be more valuable to us, they'd be happier, but they can't see it. Well, this will give you an example of what I'm talking about. So it's frustrating as HR professionals, as leaders, when we see our employees and they just need to change this one thing, stop micromanaging, or be stronger, or be more powerful in this one area, and they don't change. Why is that? So I want you to talk to a neighbor and be brave and tell them what's the one area in your life, professional or personal, that you wish you could do better. So take 1 minute, tell your neighbor, I wish I could improve in this area. If I could do it this year, it would be meaningful for me. And then swap around. 1 minute, 30 seconds aside. Please go. All right, come on back to me, please. How many people felt uncomfortable having this discussion? So our employees feel the same thing. So what we do as companies is say, okay, we're not going to focus on the weakness. We're going to do strength finder and find what your strength is. But your growth as human beings, your growth as managers, the growth of your employees comes from looking at our limitations and looking how we can improve those. And that comes from culture. How do we build that strong culture? By the way, would anybody like to share one area where you want to improve? Who would like to be a brave soul? Monica, would you care to lead us on this discussion? No? Okay. How many people here have been to a training, you went to the training, and most of what they taught you, you already knew? Been to trainings like that? So I want you to train like that. And at the end of the training, they gave everybody a board of wood. It was 1 inch thick, 10 inch by 10 inch, big board of wood, really hard. And they told everybody, gave them color pencils to write down your limitation on one side of the board. And everybody wrote that. It was 50 people. At the end of everyone writing their limitation on the board, they gathered everybody around in a circle of 50 people. And the 2 instructors went in the center. One instructor held the board, and the other instructor taught us how to break the board. And the instructor went, bang, hit the board, and it broke. Very scary, because they're professionals, and we could get hurt. So we need a volunteer. And in our group, there is this guy called John, and we all start chanting his name. John, John, John. John comes up, instructor holds the board, John winds up, goes, bang, hits the board breaks. We go crazy because one of us did it, and now we'll get to do it too, and it's possible. It'll be such a great story to tell our family and friends that I'm a Kung Fu master. So the next person breaks the board, the next. The 8th person that comes to break the board, her name is Jody, and she's the first woman coming to break the board. And Jody is an Iron Woman. For entertainment, she does a full marathon, 26 miles. She does a 100-mile bike ride and a 2-mile swim for entertainment. So she comes up, the instructor's holding the board, we're chanting, Jody, Jody, Jody. Jody winds up, goes, bang, hits the board, and the board doesn't break. And she hurts her hand a little bit. But now she gets really serious. Every ounce of power and focus on the strike. We're chanting, Jody, Jody, Jody. Jody winds up, goes, bam, hits the board doesn't break, and she injures her wrist so severely that she starts to cry. And the instructors are like, should we look after her? Or should we push her to the side and continue? That's what they did. They push her to the side and they continue the exercise. So I leave the circle of death and I go over to her and I tell her there's a branch of psychology called neurolinguistics. And there's a technique in there that will show you how to let go of that event. You may not want to break the board ever again, but you might try something new. You will remember the failure at the board. This will stop you from being successful. So I take 5 minutes, show her this process, and all the tightness in the face disappears, and you can tell something's changed inside. So I come back to the group, more people are breaking the boards. When we get to number 23 or 24, Jody comes back, comes in the circle, gives the board to the instructor. Nobody chants anything this time. She winds up, and she hits the boards and breaks it. Only person there that day that broke the board with a non-dominant hand was this one was so Asian. And I tell you this story for two very important reasons. The first one is that this makes me look heroic. Number two, this is what the instructor told us. If you want to break the board, it's very easy. All you need to do is make sure you hit 4 inches past the board, and your hand goes through the board, it breaks easily. But many people, fear comes up, and we pull our punch. When we pull our punch, this is how you hurt your hand. So that is such a great metaphor for life. There are things that you do right now that you, in those areas, you hit 4 inches past the target and you make it look easy. But there's other areas that you want to accomplish that for whatever reason, fear comes up, and we pull our punch and we don't break through. Because success in anything that we do Thank you. Success lies 4 inches past where other people stop. So I've been talking about neuroscience. I'm about to show you a commercial. This commercial was the best commercial in 2012. This commercial was built with neuroscience. Let's take a look at the commercial first, then I'll show you the neuroscience behind it. Enjoy. So this is the world of neuroscience. So the first tool in our war chest is eye tracking goggles. These are glasses that you wear. There's a camera on the frame so that scientists can see whatever you're looking at. But there's 2 cameras on the inside of the frame looking at your eyes, figuring out what you're paying attention to. And so this allows us to design airports where we can put the signs and see if people are actually seeing the signs. So we don't guess anymore, we know with certainty. The second tool is the EEG, and it measures the electrical activity on the surface of your brain. And it can tell when you're interested in something and when you're not interested. And the last thing is the fMRI. And the fMRI looks at what parts of your brain light up at what times. So at Johns Hopkins University, one of the things they're doing is they get people, they give them problems to solve. Either you know it or you have to solve it. They're looking for epiphany. They put people inside the fMRI and they figure out what parts of the brain light up when people get epiphany and get those knowings magically. So we're going to look at that data. See that red line? This is the eye tracking goggles. This is the entire frame, but this is what the person is paying attention to. This is the EEG, when they're aroused, when we should actually put the logo for the Volkswagen for them to buy. And these are the parts of the brain that are lighting up. Take a look at the commercial again with the data overlay. So I've been talking about neuroscience and change, so let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. In a moment, I'm going to get you to stand up. You can stand with your feet apart, comfortably. Don't move your feet through the entire exercise. I'm going to get you to stand up and put your left hand in front of you. And then I'm going to get you to turn over to the left until it becomes tight. When it becomes tight, you're going to take a picture of whatever your finger is pointing at. And then come back and put your arm down, leave your feet where they are. Please stand up. So put your left hand in front of you. Go, leave your feet where they are. Go around to the left. And when it gets tight, take a picture of what you're looking at. Take a picture. So look at your finger, what you're pointing at. Excellent. No, not a physical picture. Just with your mind. All right, come back to me. Okay, arms down, stay where you are. What if we did the same exercise again, and this time you went 2 inches beyond where you stopped the first time? You might say to yourself, that's interesting, improved, and you'd be looking at something different, right? Wrong. But what if you could go 10 inches beyond where you stopped, comfortably, easily, safely? You'd be looking at something along much further away. You might say to yourself, this is pretty cool. But what if you could go 20 inches beyond where you stopped? You'd be looking at a whole new different part of the city, and you might say to yourself, that's a pretty big change in such a short amount of time. So put your left arm out again. Notice how much further you get this time. Who got more than 2 inches? 4 inches, 6 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches. The reason I like that is that it's things that we do at work, where we go, this is as far as I can go. This is a self-imposed limitation. And our manager says, you can go more. I said, no, I can't go more. But I showed you a way to communicate with yourself in the language that the brain understands, and you can go 10 inches further. Imagine if you could be a 10% better manager, or a 10% better communicator, or 10% more compassionate. So what we need to do is we spend so much money on training, on process. This is a new thing we're going to bring in our company. Everyone goes, oh, another one? We're going to spend all our time doing this thing. I think where we need to invest is, the new frontier is mind training, not process. If you take a look at the efficiency of our company, it depends on the culture and our people and their beliefs about what's possible. Please grab a seat. So I'm about to tell you about, we've been talking about beliefs. So in 2003, I said, okay, this is a problem we're solving. This is not a business problem, it's a human problem. So in 2003, I started seeing private clients coming in to really understand human behavior and how to change it. One day, this woman brought in her daughter, who is 4.5 years old, and she had gone to a party with her parents. And she was the only child there, the world's most boring party for a 4.5-year-old. But luckily, those people had a dog. And Isabella, who you're about to meet, loved the dog, had a great evening. At the end of the evening, the parents said, okay, it's time to go. And they go to the front door, and as adults will do, they say goodbye for 10 minutes. Oh, we should get together, and that kind of stuff. And the kid is like, oh, this is boring, I'm gonna go play with the dog. And she goes running up to the dog, and this time when she gets to the dog isn't expecting her, and the dog bites her on the face. They rush her to the hospital, the nurses clean up the wound. A month later, a plastic surgeon makes the scar disappear. The only problem is, this is 6 months after the dog bite, and each time Isabella looks in the mirror, she sees a scar that doesn't exist. As soon as she sees the scar, she goes back to the dog bite, and her whole face gets upset. Her mom is saying, I don't want my child starting school, that each time she looks in the mirror, she feels so awful. So using neuro-linguistics, we change the meaning of that. Well, the best person to describe it is Isabella. Meet Isabella.
I'm Isabella. The dog was really cute, and I wanted to pet that dog goodbye because we were going, and I really wanted to stay, but I couldn't. And then suddenly, the dog just started. It just didn't show me any sign that it was gonna bite me or something. So instead it just bit me to tell me, go away. I saw a scar and I didn't feel like the stitches really fixed me up good. So how do you feel now? I feel much better, actually. I see myself, and now I don't see any scar. Yeah.
to 100,000 beliefs that define who we are. We have beliefs about Peru. We have beliefs about women, work, money, anything in our awareness that's important to us. We have a belief around it. The only problem is most of our beliefs we get by the time we're 7 years of age. We get those beliefs from our parents, our uncles, our aunts, our teachers. Anybody in authority says something believable, we believe it. It defines who we are. This is how easy it is to get a belief that a family is going to a concert, and when they get there, there's so many people that the mom turns to her daughter and says, "Sweetheart, if you get lost, go find a police officer and they'll help you." And that 4-year-old child goes, "The police are good. They're here to help us." And that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now her brain is looking to make that belief real. So it's looking for more information. Anytime she hears about a cop doing something good, a police officer, this strengthens. Remember those eye-tracking goggles? There's the entire frame, but we only pay attention to certain things. Well, if she heard a story of a cop doing something bad, she may not even see it. And if she did hear about it, she would justify it. So once we get a belief, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And those beliefs define who we are. By the way, are there any Catholics in the room? Trick question, it's Peru, right? So my friend was telling me the story. She was saying that when she was young, she was 7 years old that day, she came into the kitchen and her parents were having breakfast and her mom turned to her and said, "Happy birthday, sweetheart, and you've reached the age of reason." And she goes, "Age of reason?" And the mother says, "Yes, everything you do wrong now gets counted against your mortal soul. And everything you did wrong before 7 didn't count." And my friend said to her mom, "Mom, why didn't you tell me this when I was 6 and I could have used this information?" So our beliefs define who we are as individuals, but in companies, in management teams, the beliefs that we all hold determine the culture of the organization. Because oftentimes the CEO comes back from the meeting and says, "We're going to do this new thing," but oftentimes people do not follow in the way that they want. It's because the beliefs are more powerful than new ideas. In the US, they did a survey of 42,000 employees across the country. Yes, the Gallup organization did that. They asked employees, how would you categorize yourself? Are you highly engaged, somewhat engaged, somewhat disengaged, or highly disengaged? Turns out only 30% of employees in the US are highly engaged. What that means is that an employee that's highly engaged, they give you 12 hours of work in an 8-hour day. And people that are highly disengaged give you 4 hours of work at the same time. So as we build a stronger culture, people go beyond their capacity and become more engaged. And that's our goal, is how do we build an organization where people want to come to work, people want to do more than it's expected of them. So let me give you an example. Next slide, please. That is a guided missile destroyer. It's the USS Benfold, and Captain Michael Abershot, his dream job was to be a captain of a ship like that. This ship cost $1.4 billion to build. It has a crew of 300, and is a very powerful weapon in the US Army, or the Navy. So when he took over that ship, he asked the executive officer, what's the morale like on the ship? And the officer said, the morale is very bad on this ship. In fact, that ship was rated the worst ship in the Pacific Fleet. One of the problems was the food on the ship was not that good. So he canceled all the orders from the Navy to buy the food, and he started buying his food commercially. So he got brand name food, and he saved a lot of money, and he took 5 of his cooks and he sent them to culinary school to become chefs. So the quality of the food on that ship went from being bad to being very, very good. When a ship like that goes to a naval base, people on the ship eat at the naval base. When the USS Benfold goes to a naval base, people on the naval base eat on the ship. But he also realized it's the beliefs that determine how well we fight, how well we work together. And one of the beliefs that he wanted them to get was that it's your responsibility to improve what you're doing every single day. Because the other 299 people on the ship rely on you to do that. So he changes the beliefs about what the people need to do. The second thing is, what do we need to focus on? Because in any organization, there's lots of things that we can do, but only certain things that make us stronger, make us more profitable, bring more revenue in. So one of the things that they do on ships is that it's a harsh environment, so you need to scrape away the rust and repaint. You need to replace fittings. So he gets a high-tech paint job that doesn't need repainting for 25 years. He replaces all the fittings on the ship so they don't rust. So it saves a lot of time, and he focuses everybody to focus on the one thing that they should do, which is to be able to hit a target better than anyone else. So this is what he accomplishes in 1 year. We go from the worst ship in the fleet. The first year they return $800,000 in maintenance budget, because every sailor is improving what they're doing every day. A ship like that, after one tour of duty, only 54% of the sailors sign up for the second tour of duty. On the USS Benfold, 100% of the sailors sign up, saving the Navy $1.6 million in training costs. The Navy measures a ship like that, going from peacetime to come into the naval base, get all the supplies, do all the testing, and then do at-sea trials to get to a war zone. It takes 51 days. The best ship in the fleet does it in 19. So it's our goal as HR professionals, how do we change the beliefs in our organization? Because if we can change those beliefs, people go beyond themselves and they commit to the organization. So it's not about the CEO, it's not about them, it's not about their department. It's their commitment to everybody else in the organization. If we can build cultures like that, we become highly efficient and we get more done. Next slide, please. You received an email. If you haven't responded yet, please look for it later on today. There's two types of teams. You've got a great team. There's a clear vision, there's trust, there's passion, there's confidence, all the things that you're working to build into your organization. But the reality is that average companies are what we normally get, with office politics and silos and people blaming, it's not my fault, I would do this if this department did that. The question to you is this. It's a one-question survey. What percentage of the productivity gets reduced when you have an average team? So if a great team does 100%, how much percentage is lost when you have an average team? What do you think? What do you think, sir? How much percentage is lost when you have an average team? 10%? 20? More? 40%. Anybody else? 50%. Take that survey right now, it's about 52%. But when we get the data from real companies coming in, we'll send an email out after this event so you can see the data and see what it really costs. Because CEOs know that this is costing us something, but when you can actually monetize it, say, hey, that's 50%, our revenue is this much, we're losing this much money because you don't have the right culture. Next slide, please. Next slide. Fourth lesson I want to teach you is that we have all these metrics. The one we really need to take a look at, what are the beliefs of the people that work for us? And what we call beliefs in a company is culture. What's the real culture? Not what we put up on the wall. Because if you go to 100 companies, you will see we are for integrity and our employees and the planet. But when you ask employees, is that what happens here? Most of them employees go, no, that's not what we do. What we need to do is to make a living, breathing culture that makes us all stronger. Next slide, please. Our beliefs create a model of the world, how we see the world as individuals. Our beliefs as a company show us a model of the world, how we think the world works as a company. What we need to do is change our beliefs to get a better model of the world. So let me give you an example. In the US, 16,000 of these bottles get thrown away every second. So you could say in the world, maybe 160,000 of these get thrown away every second. So there's a guy called Alfredo, and Alfredo is looking at the slums around the world. In the poorest places in the world, what people use to build houses is corrugated steel, because it's cheap and it's durable. The only problem is there are no windows. Because they're poor and they're on mountainsides, there is no electricity. So at nighttime they live in the dark, but during the day they live in darkness as well. So they need to fix that problem. The model of the world that the UN has is that we need to bring electricity to this place. Who's going to pay for the electricity? Who's going to pay to bring it there? Can people afford their bill? So no one's solving it. Alfredo says, we're throwing these things away. What if we filled this with water, we took bleach in the cap, put it in, so nothing would grow inside this water. If we cut a hole at the top of the structure and put the bottle halfway down, the sun would hit the top of the bottle, and it would turn the bottom of the bottle into a 55-watt light bulb. Better than that, he said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to actually teach people how to do this so they can actually get jobs. So he's creating work, he's helping the environment, and he's bringing light to dark places. So what we need to do as organizations, oftentimes we're thinking, we need to improve what we do. What are the ideas? But we're using the old beliefs and the old model of the world to try and solve new world problems. So it's our job as HR professionals, as leaders. How do we change the beliefs so people go, it's my job to always improve what I'm doing. It's my job to commit to everybody else here. We have a clear vision, we have passion, we have drive to come together. When we have that kind of set of beliefs, then the model of the world changes because we have the bravery to take a look at what the strategy needs to be. Because more times than not, we gather our leadership in companies and we come together and we say, okay, we need to be more efficient. What are we going to do? And we come up with the same ideas. We're looking to how do we improve by 10%, 20%? When the reality is the smartest people in our company are sitting at this table. If we had a different set of beliefs, it would give us the strength to develop true strategy. Because true strategy is this. It's looking at the current situation. It's looking at the trends. It's looking at the competition. It's looking at our capacities and divining. This is a place we can put our flag and be best in the world at this one thing. When we have stronger teams, we have better vision. We have better strategy. Our job as HR professionals is how do we manage the beliefs of our organizations so we develop stronger strategies and outpace the competition and get our people to bleed for our company happily and willingly because they're part of something amazing. Let's go to the next one. Next one. This is what happens when you get the right beliefs.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Next slide, next slide, next slide. Next slide. Keep on going. Go. 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 Stop. They asked me to bring this back on schedule. So instead of an hour and 45 minutes, we're moving on schedule and get to these. So we're skipping a little bit of stuff, but I want to teach you something very important. Body language is 55% of communications. We've all seen this. The question is, what does that mean? So if you're looking at somebody like me, if I'm looking up, I'm accessing visual information. So if you ask an employee a question and they look up, they're seeing a picture inside their head. If they're looking up in this direction, they're creating a picture that does not exist. So you say, can you start this new department? If they look up here, they're envisioning that new department. If they look up here, they're remembering something from the past. If they look side to side, they're accessing auditory. If they look down here, they're accessing feelings. So when you say, what are your numbers going to look like? And they look down here, they're accessing feelings. And if you said, does that feel right to you? Because they access feelings and you call them on it, their bond with you gets stronger. When they look down here, their inner thoughts, their thinking. So as an HR professional, you have the ability to figure out what people are thinking, mind reading, but I'm going to show you something even better. In a moment, you're going to see Kelly. And Kelly, I'm going to ask him two questions. about his son that are visual questions, just to make sure he's wired like that. 94% of the population of the world is like that. 6% is wired the other way, where creative visual images here and recall images here. So I just want to figure out which way he is. Then I'm going to ask him a question about buying the computer. The question I'm going to ask him is, how did you decide to buy the computer? And when he answers that, I'm going to look at his eyes, and I will uncover how his unconscious mind makes decisions. For sales, this is huge. For leadership, when you want people to do brave things, and you can figure out how they make decisions, it gives you immense power. Because ultimately, all we have is the power to influence. See Kelly. When I ask the question, notice where he looks, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Next slide, please. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Kelly, you have a son, right?
Yes.
And how tall is your son?
He is 6'1".
6'1". And what color is his hair?
Brown.
Brown. How long did it take you to kind of find the right computer?
About 8 in 2 weeks.
2 weeks? And what did you end up buying?
Online.
Online? And what made you decide to buy that computer from that store online?
Well, the first thing was my mother was home, so that was the best place for her to do.
Okay.
And all features are spending money for in.
Right. And so you kind of saw it, and then it felt right?
Yeah.
Cool, so let me give you a proposal to get some, let's say, coaching services. So I'll make you two proposals, and I'm going to come to your house, and I'm going to come to talk to you about coaching with me. For about an hour, I give you a presentation, tell you all the things that I can do, and then you can decide if it's right for you. Or proposal number 2, I can come to your house and show you what I could do for you, and if it feels right, you could decide to go for it. Which one seems more appealing?
Number 2.
Number 2. Cool, thanks. Why, how much more? Is it much more appealing or slightly more appealing?
Much more.
Thanks. Think about that. I'm selling him the exact same thing, and I asked him a couple of questions. I can uncover how his mind makes decisions. And I asked him, which one did you like more? He said, by a lot. So as HR professionals, the new frontier is mind training, understanding how human beings work, understanding what our limitations are so we become stronger, understanding how we can get our management teams to set aside that selfishness. Because our ancestors, 50 generations ago, when there was a resource, food, water, we killed for that. Your ancestors had to be selfish in order to find more attractive mates, to have stronger children. So we come to who we are in our companies from, there's a book called The Selfish Gene, that we are selfish human beings. And what we need to do as leaders is we cannot tell people not to be selfish. The only way we can do that is to change the beliefs of the organization and build a compelling vision that people go, this is worth fighting for. And this is when people set aside their biology and they go with our ideology. So in HR, in leadership, we are not in the business of building companies. We're in the business of building stronger teams. Because once we have a strong team, we can take on anything we want. And I think that's the journey that we have. So, are there any questions that I can address for you guys? And anybody that asks a question gets a copy of the book. Do we have a microphone? Is there a question I can address for you guys? Going once? Going twice? Yes, sir. Give that man a hand. And you are, sir? Your name?
My name is Gabriel. We have been raised with the idea that we must be the best in every context.
Yes.
We are. That's very difficult to fight against that idea because we try to be even the best with our spouse, with our children, with our teammates, and with the people we share every day. What could you advise for us in order to kill that belief that we must be the best in order to enjoy more and be less selfish in the things that we really love and the things that we want to bribe?
So, I think being the best is a double-edged sword, and it hurts us more than it helps our families or helps our organizations. I think we need to change the culture to be better. Because being the best, sometimes it's unattainable. People say, yes, I want to be the best, but they don't take the action. And some people take the action in a way that they hurt their family, that they hurt their organization. So if we have a culture of better, that allows us to make those small changes that lead to great things. If we build a culture of better, then at the end of, so I'll give you an example, is at Ritz-Carlton. Do they have one in Peru? So it's a famous hotel in the US and around the world, and what they're known for their customer service. So what they do is when you're in the elevator and there's a maid in the elevator, if you say something important, the maid will go to a computer and type it in. And so they have notes on all their customers. So this one manager says, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Jones are coming to the hotel to celebrate their first anniversary. And so the manager goes, I've looked at the notes, and what we're going to do is that evening, their meal, we're going to pay for it. So it'll be our way of saying thank you for being valued customers. Makes sense, right? But the senior manager goes, no, look at the notes. In the notes, Mrs. Jones on this day was telling her husband she likes red velvet cake. What I want you to do is I want you to get the chef to make some gourmet cupcakes. And at the end of their meal, the chef will bring it out with an envelope with the recipe inside and a fancy card and present it to them. And then what we'll do is, once we do that, every anniversary they're going to make that dessert and they're going to remember us. So what that does is oftentimes, you know, we have these values that we put in to be the best, and they're meaningless. So what we need to do in organizations is capture those stories. Because that story I told you really tells something. It's not about looking after the customer, it's about looking after them in a way that they value it. So I think we need to bring better, we need to figure out what our values are, and from those values we need to reinforce those. And the way we reinforce those is that we capture stories from our employees doing great things. And we share those stories on a regular basis, and that's how people know what the culture is, and know that it's about improving all the time, rather than a destination of being the best. And please, can I give you this book? This is a picture too. Thank you. Thank you so much. One last question. Anybody have got a question? I've got 1 minute left. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's okay when you say that we as a leader to change the belief of people, but how can we do that? I mean, how can we inspire people to go out of the comfort zone? How can we do that?
Yes, that's a great question. You know, we talk about it. You know, in the U.S., where I'm from, this is what typically happens. We're going to take the management team on a retreat for 2 days at this fancy location. We're going to talk about real issues. We're going to have frank conversations. We're all going to come together with this new vision. At the end of the 2 days, the vision is so beautiful and the commitment is so strong. Have a guess how long that lasts. When they get back to work, how long does it take before they go back to the old way? 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, but they go back to the old way because the beliefs underneath have not been changed. So no matter what we want to do, the belief is like a black hole of gravity that locks the behaviors in place. So what we need to do to transform the organization is to bring the management team together. And when we bring them together, what we do is we need to create a belief change for that team. And the way we do that is to take a look at what they think the problems are right now, what they want the future to be, and every team says, this is what we want, we're going to make it happen. But how can this team that's doing this create that? So there's some mechanisms to get the team to really commit and let go of the past and bring in the future. And from the team, we can develop the values that we want and the mission we want, because oftentimes we tell our people what to do, but we as leaders don't change. I've got a course around that subject. If you drop your business card off, I'm going to send you that course. I'll go deeper into this so you get a better sense of it. Thank you so much for letting me present today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.